So try not to allow yourself to be panicked by the constant hype and repetition of things that they're telling you to be outraged about. After all, there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing. What are you going to do? Please stop putting missiles around Russia and scaring the public with retaliation. Please stop putting color revolutions into Ukraine or the next country after that, or the whole bunch of countries you're doing it to at the same time. Please stop it. Thank you very much. So what are you going to do? Get ulcers, griping over it? You see, we don't have democracy, as I say. You'll never hear the politicians bring up NAFTA, the Trans-Pacific Partnership agreements, all these free trade deals, which is not free trade at all. It's selected trade for big corporations and elimination of any competition. That's what it is. And we have to pay those third world countries, the emerging nations, just like we're still paying China, by the way, to rise up to first world status. We pay them to do that. We build their hospitals once we sign these agreements. We give them all this cash. It's a one-way street. Because it's a big plan and it's nothing to do with benefiting you. I can remember when they pushed the EU for complete integration, and they gave the folk the choice to vote yes or no. And they said to every country, the same hype, massive marketing campaigns with the top marketing companies, advertising companies, to brainwash the public and terrify them. Oh, if you don't join, you'll be left behind. If you do join, there'll be jobs, and utopia. Well, bingo. Where are they now in Europe? You see, you're always getting lied to because there's always a different agenda behind it all. Very, very clever agenda with lots of groups all working in this pyramid structure and taking command from the guy at the top. That's how it works. But meanwhile, you get one or two targets to pick and yell at, and what does it do? Nothing at all. If it wasn't that guy, they'd pick it, they'd use someone else to do it. So these guys are just front men in a sense, who know their role, just like a politician or top politicians know their role. And their role is to be unpopular and to have tomatoes thrown at them. And then they give you another target after that. It's a very simple technique. Very old too, isn't it? Very, very old, boring technique. So you're living through an agenda. Don't get outraged over things because outrage doesn't win anything. It never has anything changed. Oh, I'm outraged. Stop that. Thank you. It doesn't work. So you have to get other methods of doing it. And again, too, you got to say to yourself, why do those who have the power and the following who are pushing outrage not get something organized to really combat something in a sphere with enough political clout to do something to actually they really can't ignore you? It doesn't happen. You ever ask yourself why it doesn't happen? That's up to you to figure that out. And again, to all the remember what Bernays said, Edward Bernays. He said in his own writings, if you want to take something over, even monopolize something, whatever it happens to be, and you're starting from scratch, don't, he said, try to start things literally from scratch. Look for existing organizations. If you don't have one, you create them, but you pretend you're not associated with them. And then the people will follow them because they'll become the leaders, you see. But existing organizations you would use to the maximum, including all the churches. They're fantastic for that. And he said you have to go and approach the leaders of these people. It doesn't matter about the followers, or as George Orwell called them, the proles. The proles don't count, he said. They just train SEALs who are the yay crowd. Rah, 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 for the leaders. So that's how they manage the general population. That's why they have all these NGOs, non-governmental organizations out there, all paid for very handsomely for the leaders, by the way, not for the followers, but the leaders, from the big foundations. And the foundations have an incredible history. Very well organized, coordinated on a massive scale, often thought to be communist, in fact, according to the Rees Commission from the 1950s. Because their goals under social Darwinism are the same. They are the same because they want a planned society, birth to death, monitoring by government at every stage of your life, every day of your life, in fact, and school to work, of course, where they simply test you for a few abilities very young, and they'll say he'll be a good plumber, a good electrician, whatever, and that's all you'll be trained in. You don't need geography, history, or anything else. That's the plan for the future. And it's already being implemented too. And as I say, you have no say in any of it at all, because what you're fighting is a complete system with literally maybe thousands of think tanks, thousands of them, full-time, very intelligently selected guys in it, think tanks, lots of them who have nothing to do but work on each simple problem of their big agenda and how to get the public and to coerce and manipulate and nudge the public along with the big plan in every possible aspect of life. So each one is specialized in a specific part of it, and many think tanks are working on the second or third or fourth or fifth stage after the present, as the present one's still working on the present, if you understand what I'm saying. That's what you're up against. How can you possibly combat that by being outraged with things that are happening this very moment, which will be gone tomorrow or the next week or whatever, as you turn your attention onto the next crisis, real or possible or fake, whatever. I've often said the main thing you have to do is to, educate yourself by yourself. All the information is out there if you're guided towards it. Something will guide you towards it or drive you. I call it driving you towards something. If it's so important to you, you'll be driven. Sometimes in a crazy way, in fact, until it'll take over your life as you're driven to find out the whys. And once you understand the whys, then you understand what's coming. When you understand what's coming, you don't panic. You don't panic. It's expected to happen. So don't let others manipulate you into the fear mode, which actually disables you. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who exploit you as well and sell you all kinds of things for the sky is falling scenarios because they make an awful lot of money at it. There's a lot of people in this world, and we live in this materialistic system. They can be so easily exploited by the unscrupulous or even psychopathic types as well. Because the psychopath smells which way the wind is going for opportunities, and he'll be there. He'll be there where there's an opportunity for him to pirate everyone else's stuff too. And once he gets the mantras right, the people will listen and then exploit you, you see. There's lots of groups out there doing that kind of thing too. And the same thing happens with the NGOs, only they're taught what they're doing. They know what they're doing at the top in the big think tanks. They know how to manipulate you, create the crisis, create the fear or the impression or the techniques of fear. And I call them techniques of fear. You don't need a crisis fear state to come upon you. And here's a little secret here too, for those who don't know. Many moons ago, the behaviorists got into studying fear. Fear itself is a method of total control for compliance amongst the public. And every country was involved in these. In fact, during the Cold War, all top scientists, by the way, shared everything to their so-called enemies. It was all nonsense. And they said, how can we create fear? For instance, here's an example. If you're faced with a tiger in the jungle, you're going to have sudden fear with all the responses that fear brings, you see. The fight or flight syndrome, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, all of that. You might empty your bladder, or even worse in some people. And then you vamoose as fast as you can, or you become frozen and you get eaten, you see. There's different responses of different people as to how they'll react to it. But they noted all the different sensations which come with the state of total fear, where you're faced with imminent death, for instance. And it was interesting from those who ran Russia. I always say those who ran it because a lot of them didn't come from Russia. But the fact is, those who ran Russia, they did a lot of experiments which they couldn't, well, at least they couldn't openly so much do in the West, because when you're killing your subjects like humans, it's not too popular. And again, you might get that outrage thing that goes nowhere. But you find that they found if they could simulate the symptoms, which generally come secondarily to the actual instigator, the motive, the object that terrifies you. You get all these symptoms kick in, where your pupils will dilate, more light comes in for fight and flight, so blood pressure changes, your heart goes up, adrenaline gets shot in. So if they could make these things happen through other techniques, even electronically, then you would go into the same state of fear as though you were facing a tiger without a tiger being present. This is a well understood science. And I could yap on for an awful long time, days and weeks maybe, about all the studies that were done. However, it's used on you today. Through television, through computer, through, I'm certain, as Brzezinski was talking about this technique where they could literally go across a whole continent with electromagnetic waves, etc. HAARP technologies, you might call them. Wi-Fi is included in that, and create these same side effects, which would make the whole nation anxious or very depressed, or even make you so relaxed when you shouldn't be relaxed, perhaps, and manipulate the public. These are warfare techniques, and we live in an age of advanced science. Even during the Cold War, the front guys would tell you those who win this war will be the leaders in very advanced sciences. Well, it hasn't stopped, folk. And all those experiments that used during the Cold War and they made during they're all being used on you today. You see. From the simple techniques of just hype, I could hit you with 1,000 stories a day until you're quivering under your kitchen table in total breakdown and panic. But I don't. Because that disables you. That's a warfare technique. I keep saying it over and over. The average person, even a person who's got more stamina, could perhaps handle two major crises at one time, maybe a third, a little bit, without cracking, as long as they're not prolonged. But more than that, you crack up. So if I were to tell you, but worry about this today, just for today's news, you're going to go into a panic mode, fear mode. You'll sound like a loony to your friends. You'll look like a loony to your friends, and you get nothing done. In fact, you won't even get your basic, essential daily living done. You'll start to fall and break down. So don't go there. It's a weaponized system. As I say too, with Wi-Fi, etc., it's still ongoing. So much money even at top universities are still experimenting with these Wi-Fi waves and electromagnetic energy policies, etc. The unified field, as I want to call it, too. Persinger's into that at Laurentian University in Canada here. And he thinks it's wonderful when we'll all feel the pain of someone in Africa who's starving. Well, who gives him the right to make us all feel the pain of somebody in Africa? And why Africa? You understand? When they have the ability to change your mood, emotion, and so on, without your consent either. I mean, who's going to consent to being manipulated by someone else? The game's over. It's over, folks. You won't know whose thoughts you have, who gave them to you, reinforced again by the propaganda media, by an invisible energy that's all around you, where, again, an elite are saying, well, make them feel this, feel that, and so on. And they'll couple that with the news that you're hearing. You see? This is their goal for a peaceful planet. I always think of the fake communist system. And I mean, I say fake because a lot of real communists followers are always real, generally. You see? They're fanatics. But the leaders always know what they're doing, and how they kept going over this future utopia that never arrived in the Soviet Union. It wasn't meant to arrive in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was just one generation, really, a 70-odd year generation, as Lenin said. It would merge with the West and a system would become not quite capitalist, not quite communist. They now call it socialist, but it's a social Darwinism run by the elite, because the foundations were behind all of these movements for centuries, by the way.